What drives someone to change the world? Welcome to Social Trailblazers, where we seek to answer just that question. Join Kelly Gagnon, CEO of Nonprofit Marketing Nerd, as she interviews leading social innovators and nonprofit changemakers. This podcast is brought to you by DonorBox, the easiest way for nonprofits to rock their online donations.
In this episode of Social Trailblazers, we are sitting down with Amber Kaylor, who's honestly one of the most inspiring female nonprofit leaders I have the courtesy of knowing and calling a friend. As the CEO of Ronald McDonald House Charities of Central Illinois, Amber's passion for helping children and families shines through in everything she does. In this episode, we'll be talking about her early days in fundraising and media to making some bold operational shifts in leadership roles at two different organizations. Make sure to listen to the end of this episode where Amber shares specifically how she keeps all of her different hats as a mother, wife, community leader, friend, and human being going while still operating as the CEO of a nonprofit. Awesome, Amber. Thank you so much for joining for Social Trailblazers. Now, I know for so many nonprofit leaders like yourself, your journey to where you are now has been a long and windy road. How did you get where you are now?
Oh, it has been a long and windy road. So, I started in the nonprofit space 20 years ago now, probably 20 years ago, and I worked for a healthcare organization. And so that was kind of dipping my toe in the water. And I don't think at that point in my career, I was really thinking about, hey, I want to be in nonprofit work. I think I just got into this organization and it really kind of grabbed hold of me, and I loved healthcare. And I loved, the social impact and those kind of things. And then, I strayed away for a little bit and I ended up in media for a handful of years, which is quite a departure. And, that I always say, I'm like, what a great detour it was, because it gave me so many transferable skills and it positioned me for a lot of the growth that happened afterwards. And it was also just a great opportunity to make connections and to learn, how to be responsive at a moment's notice, and how to formulate an answer very quickly and, how to communicate and storytell very well. So I'm very thankful, for that detour that I took. And then I came back and I went into an agency that helped build capacity for many nonprofit organizations. And that was fantastic because it let me see a little bit of what everyone was doing in the community and how they were making an impact. And I would say that's probably where I got really hooked, that just, this is where I'm meant to be. This is where I'm meant to land. And then from there, it was just, multiple other opportunities that presented themselves, that brought me here today. But everything has built on itself, if you will. And it's all given me a different lens, but led me in the same general direction. So I feel like I have a really good holistic view of the nonprofit space, of social impact, and specifically children and families.
So, you talked a little bit about your experience in media and how that really impacted you as a storyteller. And I have to confess, many people, including me, think of you primarily for the amazing work you do in fundraising. But I think when you look back in your leadership career, there's so much you've truly done at operational capacity building and infrastructure advancements at both the organizations that you've been the CEO or executive at. What are you the most proud of? And will you share a little bit more about kind of that growth?
Ooh, that's a good question. And it's interesting because I think when you do this type of work, the fundraising is really what's front facing, and that's kind of where people see you the most. And oftentimes the infrastructure building, the capacity building, all of the, what I like to call the unsexy things, about nonprofit work, happen behind the scenes, and rightfully so. So, I would say probably what I'm the most proud of in the past two organizations that I've had the honor of leading is I'm a big proponent of leaving things better than you found them, and I think when you come into an organization, everybody leaves their mark on an organization, and you certainly hope it's a positive one. And I have had the ability to create expanded infrastructure, expanded impact, and just expanded operational capabilities, which is something that I kind of oddly nerd out over, and
I forgot about that before. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the front facing, and I love being in the communities, and I love, the fundraising aspect, but really getting to see a process optimized within an organization gets me fired up. And I think the reason for that is because on the end of that is increased service delivery and increased impact, so when I can come into an organization and say, man, we can do this better, and we can really streamline this, become more efficient here, and create expanded infrastructure and build our capacity. What ultimately is happening is we're serving the end user better. So I nerd out over the operations for that reason, because I know what a significant impact it has. And I'm very honored and proud that I've been able to come into organizations where I have the freedom to do those things and just create more capacity to help more people.
Yeah. And I know you're currently serving as the CEO of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Central Illinois.
Yes.
Will you share a little bit more about some of that operationalizing or growth you've seen there?
Yeah. So I have the best job in the world. Just putting that out there. I tell everyone that. And, we're an interesting organization because RMHC is a global system. We have 380 some odd programs in 60 some odd countries. And we really are everywhere. And most people know the name, they've heard of the brand. But each individual chapter, which is what I lead, is its own entity. So we're our own 501c3. We have our own board of directors. We really operate as individual businesses. So it's an interesting structure, first of all. And then the mission, of course, is to provide a supportive place for families to stay when their child is ill or injured. So the mission is really what hooked me, in terms of taking this role. And once I got into the organization, we were in an interesting position because we had one location, one house for 30 some years. And we had just built a second location, a second house, a little over an hour away. And it was right before COVID. So I was hired in the midst of COVID. And it was really my charge to figure out, how do you operationalize an organization that has more than doubled in its physical space, that now covers substantially more geographical space, and is now serving a much larger demographic across the state. And you do it in the middle of a pandemic. So it was no big deal. No big deal. So it's been an interesting journey for myself and for the organization, because your operational objectives change significantly. The mission never changes. You never waver from why we're doing what we're doing. But how do we build a staffing structure that now supports a much larger, much more sophisticated organization? How do you build communication systems that link two facilities that are over an hour apart and create a sense of connectedness between staffs that are in very different communities and very different facilities? And then this has probably been the most challenging, how do you create a culture that is consistent across those two facilities and across all of that staff that may never see one another, other than virtually? And I think it's just been a really interesting challenge. It's something I've thoroughly enjoyed. We're still working on it. Frankly, I've been here for 4 years, and I think it'll be a work in progress. But it was a really cool opportunity for me to walk into a situation where it was like, wow, the playbook has been thrown out the window, for all reasons. And now we're going to build the plane while we fly it and figure out, how do we continue serving families? And I think, in terms of going back to what I'm most proud of, one of the things I'm most proud of is families never felt that. They never knew, in terms of their experience, that we were rebuilding this entire organization from the inside out, and how we operationally function. They were just taken care of, and so ideally that's what you want when you're undergoing massive change like that in any type of nonprofit or social agency, that the service delivery, the end user never feels it. They just feel that mission impact.
Yeah. Props to you and your team and your growing and evolving team, I know, on making that, a reality for, the most important people in the organization, the people you serve. So
Absolutely. Yeah. It was certainly a team effort.
Yeah. And I full confession, I guess, for listeners, Amber and I know each other personally, but I was trying to figure out, I think we knew of each other and kind of met a couple times. When did we first actually connect and realize how wonderful the other person was? Do you know?
I'm going to say we were in, that women's group together. And prior to that, I think we had crossed paths, we had spoken, and I think we had an awareness of one another, but probably not until we were in that group together did we really get to learn about the other person and get to know one another and really kind of understand, build a friendship. I would say that's, unless it was before that, I don't think it was.
No, I think that was it. I think we were, And I think that you and I have both benefited from a community of people, but especially women that have supported us. And I think that specific example.
This episode is brought to you by DonorBox, the online fundraising platform that streamlines your process, elevates your donations, and ensures a user-friendly experience for your supporters. Explore the world of simplified, seamless fundraising at DonorBox.org today.
But I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe your community and maybe who's kind of helped you get to where you are today.
Yeah. So when I went into my first position as CEO at my old role, my previous organization, some really strong women had led that organization prior to me. And I was fortunate that they were willing to talk with me whenever, I had questions. They were willing to, share their past experiences and really set me up for success. So just give them all the credit in the world. And then I also walked into an all-female team that was already very strong. So I will be the first one to say, I may be the one out front, but my team is really the one that's accomplishing all of these things, and doing all of this fantastic work. So I had this core group of women that were there before me that were willing to pour into me. And then I had a core group of women who were part of my team. And then I just had a lot of women in the community that I had built relationships with. They were always willing to be an outlet, and the group that we were in is a perfect example. It was just kind of one day I got an email hey, we're going to start this, It was literally just out of the blue, we're going to start this group. Would you want to be in it? And it was just women lifting each other up, and it was, I miss it still because it was just such a cool experience. And we didn't, we knew of each other, but it wasn't oh, we're all friends, we get together anyway. This was really women that, maybe you crossed paths, maybe you didn't. And we got to learn about each other and hear each other's struggles. And I learned so much in that, experience. And I took a lot away from that. And I think that's just a testament to community and how women, when we band together, can really help lift one another. And then when I came here, the hiring committee that hired me, the chair of the board at the time, was a fantastic woman who I'm still friends with. I just had lunch with her today. And, that was really kind of the pivotal decision maker for me, because my predecessor and I never crossed paths. She had already moved on, when I came to the organization. So this woman was really my entry point, into the organization and my entry point with the board. And I was just so impressed with her and the way she conducted herself and the way she spoke about the organization and the way she, interacted with me, that I think that, again, is just a testament to the way that you can lift other women up and the way that we should lift other women up. And I just am very thankful because I think she was a big part of why I wanted to come here.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, no, that is, yeah, I always joke with that women's group we were in that it was a secret society, or she was out of nowhere, nobody really knew, and it felt very secret society, meeting in secret locations at secret times.
Yes. We had an acronym, we had all,
yeah. We did. Oh, that's so funny. So I know that I think many people that know you would probably describe you as an optimistic realist. You're always looking at the positive side, but very realistic about where things are at. But I would say And I'd say I'm like a more of a turning like deficit-based realist, right? It's like you and I are kind of like opposite ends of the coin. But I know sometimes there are struggles in the nonprofit space. And would you be willing to share some of the struggles you've had as a nonprofit leader, or maybe one that kind of stands out?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there are many. I think, I always say I'm like, nonprofit work is not for the faint of heart, not at all. You have to be scrappy. And, I think it's the same struggles that probably anyone has. There's an added pressure to the nonprofit space. And the reason I say that is because there are lives, there are individuals attached to this work. And oftentimes individuals that you see face to face, depending on the type of organization that you're in. And I think that creates an added level of pressure and accountability when you're in roles like this. And the other thing that I've shared with people, when I talk to somebody who's like, hey, I'm looking to advance in my nonprofit career, or, I think I want to move into executive leadership. There is an amount of pressure that comes with being at the top that no one fully realizes until they're there. And that's not oh, look at me, I'm so awesome. That's just a reality that you get to a level where there's no one to turn to in certain situations. I have an amazing team. I have an amazing board. But there are times that it's literally just me and the final decision. And that's a lot of weight. That can be a lot of weight. And so, we have gone through times as an organization, both here and in my previous organization, where I was really doubting myself, and questioning myself and trying to figure out like, who's my outlet, which I think goes back to the having strong, support systems and having a strong community around you. And specifically at the museum before here, COVID happened while I was there, like, hey, we're, one day we're having a board meeting and we're talking about our sustainability plans for the next 3 years. And 2 weeks later, we're closed.
Right.
And, and so it was really a different level of pressure and self-doubt during that time, because there was no playbook. Nobody could tell me if I was making the right calls. I was worried about staff livelihood at that point in time. Like, are we going to be able to pay our people? How are they going to live if we go, yes, I'm worried about myself, but now I also have these other people that are looking to me and asking me for reassurance and wondering what's coming next. Not to mention the individuals that benefited from our services. So I think, everyone experiences struggles. I just feel like there is an added amount of pressure and there is an added amount of accountability when you're leading a nonprofit organization, because you have a very full understanding of how many people are counting on you and your decision making. And sometimes you remember
how you told us kind of like, abstractly, like, yes, but do you remember like any specific, like in your body feelings, especially during COVID, which is a great example, right? Of like how you felt, any specific moment where you're like, this is when like the terror hit me.
Yeah. So we were at a place where I didn't know if we were going to make payroll. Honestly, that's where we were, because we had no earned income. The doors were closed. We were scrambling like everyone else, trying to figure out like, how do we bring in, some revenue? And we were kind of living off of, money that we had. And we got to a place where I remember very vividly telling the staff, like, I don't know what's going to happen next. Like, I don't know how much longer we can cover payroll. And they were like, offering like money. They were offering like solutions. They were, it was like, it was truly like one of those times that will stick out in my head. But I remember very vividly, I went home and I sat at my kitchen bar and just broke down. Mm-hmm. And my husband was like, this isn't your fault. And I said, I know it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. Yeah. And I felt like broken, is probably the best way to describe it. I felt, and I get to this day, I can remember that feeling like in my chest of just brokenness. And, like you're supposed to be able to fix it. You're supposed to be able to be the one that like, I am an optimist and I'm a cheerleader at heart, and like, I'm always like, we're going to do this and these things are going to happen and it's going to be amazing. And I had nothing, I had no solution. I had no reassurance and I had no path forward at that point in time. And it just like, it physically broke me in a way that I don't think I've ever experienced before. And I just sat there and cried and, and then it was, and then you dry your tears and you're like, all right, what else is there I can do?
Right.
And you try to get back to work, and so that was probably the one example that really sticks out in my mind, especially during COVID, where like, that was probably the lowest, point for me. And then all of this, like other opportunity for funding started popping up.
Right.
And then it was like,
out and you're like, oh, this is a totally different story. Yeah,
exactly. So then it was, then we were able to rally and keep paying people. But until that time, like it was scary. It was a scary thought.
Yeah. I think, it shows a true leader where I think a lot of leaders wanted to have solutions and so didn't really communicate the process with their team, right? That was a very uncertain time. And so, like congrats to you for, props to you for being explicit, being open, being vulnerable. I think that really does establish trust that I've seen with you. I've had the, luxury of observing you with a few different teams over the years. And I think it's a special superpower you have.
Yeah, well, I think so. Sometimes I say I'm like transparent to a fault, but I'm a fan of like bringing people in and letting them understand why, when you can, when it's appropriate, because especially in situations like that, like there's no right or wrong answer here. We're all just trying to figure it out. And I think sometimes showing that vulnerability, like you said, it builds trust and it also creates that greater sense of team. So that people don't feel like they're just out on an island, by themselves.
Yeah. So I know we touched a little bit on your role right now as the CEO of the Ronald McDonald Charities of Central Illinois. And I had to practice that before you and I hopped on. You guys have a very long name for an organization.
Yes.
Also an acronym, correct? Also an acronym?
Yes. So RMHC is the acronym. And then RMHCCI is our specific acronym because we're Central Illinois. So even our acronym is long, just best of luck. Best of luck to you.
So if you see me looking at this way to reading, I'm just making sure I say your organization's name correctly.
I understand.
Yeah, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what do you have going on now there? I know you talked about your expansion to multiple sites. What's going on there?
It's interesting because we're at another kind of like position of preparing for growth. So we have I'm here in Springfield today at our house in Springfield. I also have an office in our house in Peoria, and both houses are doing fantastic, and the house is what we would consider a core program. So we have these two core programs. We would also consider a Ronald McDonald Family Room a core program. And so that's a space that's within a hospital that families can utilize for respite. Sometimes there's sleeping rooms. Sometimes it's just kind of a lounge space with a place to go grab a bite to eat, get a shower, etc. So we are actually in the beginning phases of a Ronald McDonald Family Room at our hospital partner here in Springfield. So that is underway and will hopefully be well underway later this year and then poised for an opening in early 2025. So that's a fantastic opportunity to expand and serve families that may not be comfortable leaving their child's bedside. We're a big proponent of, we believe we're a vehicle for family-centered care. And what that means is we are removing barriers that allow families to be part of their child's care plan, be at the bedside during rounds, be involved in decisions that are happening because we've removed the barrier of distance, of, financial burden, all of those things, and position them in a way that they can be with their child when they need to be with their child. And a family room is an extension of that. So specifically in the pediatric intensive care unit where this family room will be located, those are often caregivers who do not want to leave the bedside long enough to come even across the street and be at our house. So this will be an opportunity for them to take a shower, get some food, grab a cup of coffee. There will be opportunities for them to relax in, comfortable furniture, just have a cozy place that is still within this unit. So they are not far from their child at any time. So that is happening. We also have what we call hospitality carts, which are very much how they sound. It's like a rolling cart that we take into the hospitals, and they're loaded with, whatever items the hospital tells us is needed. So in one instance, our hospital partner in Peoria said, like a rolling Walgreens, is kind of what they said. So it's like, toothpaste and, maybe like Visine, just anything that you can think of that a family member who's in the hospital with their child who's not leaving may need. So volunteers take those carts across the different floors of the hospital, and they go into the rooms and they provide things for both the child and the family free of charge. Everything that we do is free to the families that access our services. So those things one cart has started rolling in our Springfield hospital partner. The cart in Peoria, we are in the late phases of deploying that. So it should be deployed here by the end of the year. So we will have both of those programs in our hospitals. We'll have a family room here in Springfield. And then we'll have both of our houses, which we've now opened day programs within our houses, which is essentially a family that is not going to stay overnight with us, but wants to come over, take a breath, get out of the hospital for a little bit, again, shower, do some laundry, get a bite to eat, rest a little bit, and then recharge so they can go back to the hospital. So lots of growth happening, a
lot of things.
So we're busy. We're very busy. And it's great because it's, again, going from where we were and having this huge growth, pause, let's figure out how we operate now in our new space, to now being like, all right, how do we serve more families? How do we serve them better? And that's really where we are, just, growing in a way that we can serve more families and meet them where they are.
Well, it sounds like at least for the next couple quarters, you and your entire team are going to be very, very busy. I feel very, very busy. That might be an understatement. And speaking of busyness, I do feel like, I've known you for, I don't know, probably almost a decade. I don't know. I'll do the math, right? Yeah. And
when we were 12.
Yeah. No. You always seem externally to have a lot going on and being focused, focused on the things. So you are a very focused mother. You're a very focused wife. You're a very focused CEO. You're a very focused friend. You're a very focused community member. You also, and again, this is appearances, seem to be very focused on your health and spiritual well-being. How do you do it? How do you do it?
Good question. Thank you, first of all, because apparently it looks much better than it feels. This is going to sound super cheesy, but sometimes I tell myself, I'm like, it's like the power of the impossible. There are things that you do in your life that you're just like, that's impossible. I can never do all that. I can never get all that accomplished. I can never balance all those things. And then you'll look back down the road, and you'll be like, how did I do all that? You just do it, and I think that's something that I've learned is hesitation is the killer of progress. So it's if you sit there and you overanalyze and you hesitate and you think about, well, how am I going to accomplish it? Well, you're not going to accomplish anything. So you just do it. And that's what I've found is when I took on this role, I was unsure, when I first looked at it, it's oh, how am I going to be a mom and, travel over an hour, to my office and one office and just under an hour to the other office and still be involved in the community and still work out and still, and still. And I thought that real briefly. And then I was like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of, I was like, if it's meant to be, we'll figure it out. And it has, everything just kind of falls into place. And I've learned, and I don't remember, I think it was someone in our group back when we had our women's group, talked about, work-life balance is a lie. That you're never in balance. It's just different things rise to the surface at different times, and cumulatively you find balance, over time. And I think that's what it is there are times where, I am really doing a lot work related and I'm really just on the go and I'm away from home a lot, which I don't love, honestly. Like, I don't like being away from my husband and my son a lot. And then there are other times where I'm just like, good, I'm working from home a little bit more. I make it a priority to be at all of his sports things. My son's into all the sports. And then as far as like taking care of myself, that's been probably the hardest balance to find, and the hardest thing to prioritize. And when I first took this role and I was on the road so much, that fell by the wayside. Quite honestly, it fell by the wayside for a while. And then I figured out that it was just a matter, again, of just don't think about it, just do it. So I come home and I immediately change clothes and I work out at home, which is something that I didn't really do a whole lot of before. I used to go to the gym, we went to the gym together, I was at the gym quite a bit. That's just not a reality for me now. So now I get home and I walk in, and my son is like outside playing basketball and he's like, yeah, you're cool. So it's like I greet my family and then I immediately change out of my work clothes. I put workout clothes on. I work out for a half an hour, and that may be all I get, but that's enough. It's something's better than nothing. And then we do the things, So I think the more you think about it, the harder it seems, and the less you think about it and you just do it. It just happens.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. There's solution. Just do it. I love
it.
Nike. Nike. Let's just apply Nike to our lives. Yeah.
I love it.
So first, Amber, I want to thank you so much for coming on Social Trailblazers, for being a social trailblazer. And really, I think for so many nonprofit leaders, especially aspiring nonprofit leaders who are women, we really do look at you as someone who has kind of figured things out and doing things the right way. You're like, no, I'm not. So I want to thank you not just for the work you do right now for children and families, but for being an inspiration to other nonprofit leaders. If people want to get in contact with you or learn more about the really long acronym organization, where can they find you?
So really long website name. We are rmhc-centralillinois.org. And that is our website where you can learn all about our houses, our additional programs that are forthcoming, ways to get involved, volunteer, donate, all of those wonderful things. We're also on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And then I personally am on LinkedIn. Just under my name, Amber Kaylor. And then also I'm active on Instagram. And by that, I mean, I just look at other people's stories. So you won't see anything but pictures of my child and my dog. But that is Miss ADV on Instagram, if anybody's interested in following me there. But thank you so much for having me. And thank you for all your kind words. Like I said, I have the best job in the world. And I just feel really honored to get to do what I do and get to do it in the communities I do it in and with the community of people that are around me. So I'm just really honored that you asked me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Social Trailblazers. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who are passionate about making a difference. Special thanks to our sponsor, DonorBox, for supporting this podcast and the incredible work of nonprofits everywhere. Join us next time as we continue to dive deep into the motivations of the change makers shaping our world. Until then, keep